Hello, welcome back to J.P.'s World of Wrestling. Now, as you can see, a little bit of a different background. That's just because it's kind of late at night, and I didn't want to go through all the whole setup that I normally do. It does require a little bit of setup, but I don't know. This setup's much easier. But like I said, it's kind of late at night. My wife is out for the night. Her dad is kind of in the ER tonight. He's probably going to be okay. But she's going to be gone the whole night, and I'm here by myself. So why not do a video? So I'm going to continue on, not only with my top 5, but I'm also going to show off a couple more of my original San Francisco Toy Maker figures from WCW. I say a couple because this time it's a tag team. And it's not other than these guys. Brian Knobbs, Jerry Sags, the Nasty Boys. Now, I always liked the Nasty Boys. Whether it was WCW, WWE, whatever, WWF, I didn't care. I think they were also in the AWA at some point. NWA, whatever. But anyway, these are great figures, especially this one. For whatever reason, Jerry Sags, he always has like a really awesome figure. Like this one, his Hasbro figure is like really super cool too. I think it's just because the pose. This is like, you couldn't ask for a more perfect pose than this. And this one's pretty good. It's not as good, but it's pretty good. You get the hands are a little bit open, but they're close enough to where, you could, anyway. Yeah, so, like I said before, I liked these figures. These were kind of, sort of like Hasbro-esque, or maybe a bigger version of Galoob's. But the only thing I didn't like is the paint. Like I said, the paint would come off on other figures when you're wrestling with them, and then it would just be permanent. You couldn't really get it off. But no, I remember watching the Nasty Boys. I first saw them in WCW. I remember seeing them wrestle such teams as the Road Warriors and Harlem Heat. Then when they came to the WWF, they wrestled teams like the Hart Foundation and the Legion of Doom, and they were great. I loved the Nasty Boys. They weren't super technical, but they were still like kind of a top tier team. They won the tag titles at WrestleMania 7, lost them at SummerSlam to the Legion of Doom, but they went to WCW. And I remember specifically they had a feud with the Blue Buds, which was Lord Steven Regal and Beautiful Bobby Eaton. And I remember they wrestled at Halloween Havoc, in which Jerry Sags pile drove one of them onto a pumpkin, which I got a kick out of. And then they wrestled, like I said, the Harlem Heat and the Steiner Brothers. I actually remember another match with the Harlem Heat where they were wrestling kind of in the stands, and they made their way over to a merchandise table and started fighting at the merchandise table. So anyway, great tag team, and they're both like really good friends with Hulk Hogan, and but I love this figure. As far as this figure line, this is probably my favorite of this figure line, just because of the pose. It's just a super easy pose to use. But anyway, the Nasty Boys, yeah. Okay, so now this top 5 list, this was actually given to me. The idea for this list was actually given to me by one of you. You told me, hey, you should do this list. I gotta admit, it was a little bit challenging because there's so much meat on the bone for this. There's so many options. I might actually have to do this in 2, maybe even 3 parts and these aren't necessarily in order. These are just 5 that I thought of that were. These are like the top 5 worst gimmicks in wrestling. So there was a lot of terrible gimmicks. There just were, and I mean, most of these, I mean, all of these were WWF gimmicks, but there were some pretty bad WCW gimmicks too. But we'll get into those. But for now, I'll just read these off, and I might throw an honorable mention in there somewhere. I don't know, but these are 5. Like I said, I'll probably do more because there were a lot of terrible gimmicks. So I'll just start with number 5. As far as terrible gimmicks, I'll start with the Red Rooster, portrayed by Terry Taylor. Now, he would come down to the ring to barnyard sounds, a rooster, and he would kind of spike the top of his hair and dye it red. Then he would kind of do this like chicken strut, and it's kind of a stupid gimmick. Now, from what I understand, according to Terry Taylor, he was supposed to have the Mr. Perfect gimmick, but they gave that to Kurt Hennig and they left him stuck with a red rooster. Now, according to everybody else, primarily somebody like Bruce Pritchard, he says, no, that's ridiculous. There's no like box of gimmicks like Terry Taylor claims. He claims that they just pulled out gimmicks for somebody. Oh, you get the Red Rooster. Kurt Hennig gets Mr. Perfect. But I don't know. I don't think that's true. But apparently what it was, if what Bruce Pritchard is saying is true, is that Terry Taylor didn't really understand the Red Rooster gimmick. He wasn't actually supposed to be an actual rooster. It's just whenever Vince McMahon first saw him, apparently Terry Taylor came across as kind of arrogant, somebody that thought he was kind of the cock of the walk. To Vince McMahon, he said, oh, he reminds me of a banning rooster, a barnyard banning rooster. Somebody, one of these roosters that walks around and is dominant in the barnyard and thinks he's like everything. And that's kind of the way Terry Taylor came across to Vince McMahon. And as Bruce Pritchard and Jim Cornette both agree, yeah, he is kind of cocky and he is kind of arrogant. So he was supposed to be just this arrogant guy. He was supposed to be like a guy that just thought he was the cock of the walk. But Terry Taylor took it to mean, oh, well, I'm supposed to be an actual rooster. And that's how it came across. And I guess because he didn't really embrace it, the gimmick kind of just flopped and didn't really work. But again, I don't know. It was still a terrible gimmick. So number 4 on my list is Akeem, the African Dream, portrayed by a guy who at one point was known as the One Man Gang. Now, the One Man Gang, that was a cool gimmick. That was kind of a cool, he portrayed himself as like a real tough guy. He'd come to the ring with the denim vest jacket. He had the mohawk. He had the skull kind of tattooed on his head. And, came across as a real tough guy. But unfortunately, Vince McMahon didn't own the intellectual property rights to the One Man Gang. And Vince liked to have guys that he could, make money with and gimmicks that he could own. So he turned the One Man Gang into Akeem, the African Dream. And at the time, the One Man Gang was being managed by Slick. So they did this series of video promos where the One Man Gang went to Africa and got in touch with his African roots. So then suddenly they came back and they put him in all this African garb, and he walked around like this and wiggled his fists around and did all these stupid like strutty dance moves, and it was just kind of dumb. But to Akeem's credit, he embraced that gimmick and he made it work. It was kind of cheesy, but he made it work, and he had a real good run with it. And he and the Big Boss Man were a tag team, and they feuded with the Mega Powers. But then eventually, Akeem and Big Boss Man split up, and Akeem went back to being the One Man Gang in ECW, and then the Big Boss Man stayed and had a good run in WWE. So it wasn't right away when he became the One Man Gang in ECW. I mean, it was a few years had to pass, but when ECW actually became like ECW, like Extreme Championship Wrestling, that's when the One Man Gang kind of made an appearance and had a run there. And yeah, so Akeem comes in at number 4. Now, number 3 is the Repo Man. Now, the Repo Man was portrayed by Barry Darsow, who was also known as Smash from Demolition. Now, Smash was a cool gimmick. I mean, Smash was cool as one half of Demolition, and I think they probably could have had Smash just become a wrestler by himself and had him just be Smash. But, they chose to have Crush go off on his own. And so I guess they had this idea for a gimmick, and so they put Barry Darsow in like one of those Lone Ranger style eye masks. They cut all of his hair off, and they made him the Repo Man. And he would just kind of try to sneak to the ring, wearing this jacket with shoulder pads made from tires and tire marks across like his back, and he would just kind of sneak around the ring as if we can't see you. Where's the Repo Man? I can't see him. He's so sneaky. But anyway, it's kind of a dumb gimmick. So Repo Man comes in at number 3. Now number 2. Number 2 is a doozy. Number 2 is Bastion Booger. Yeah. Bastion Booger. Now, I used to listen to Bruce Pritchard podcast all the time. I don't really listen to it very much anymore, but I used to listen to it all the time. And according to Bruce Pritchard, Vince McMahon was trying to come up with ideas for different characters. And so he was kind of bugging Bruce about different characters. And Bruce just threw out a name off the top of his head, not expecting anything to come from him. He's like, Bastion Booger. So Vince thought it was funny. He's like, I love it. Make it happen, Bruce. And so Bruce was like, I didn't mean, okay. So Bastion Booger, before he was kind of a monk, Friar Ferguson. He was Friar Ferguson for a couple of weeks, but that didn't really work out, so they just turned him into Bastion Booger. And he was supposed to be this big, fat, glutton guy with, he had some missing teeth. And I think he was called Norman or something. Norman something in WCW. He was supposed to be a mental patient in WCW, but in WWF he was Bastion Booger, where he was like always eating. And his finishing move was he would sit down on a guy's face. Anyway, number 1 was also a doozy. Number 1, they tried to have him come across as intimidating. I think he was supposed to be kind of like a Vader type wrestler, but the WWF didn't have Vader, so they created Mantar. Yep, Mantar. He would come to the ring wearing a big buffalo head. Then they'd take it off, and then he would have his eyes kind of painted black, and they kind of came back. But the thing is, with the shape of his body, they put him in this like brown like onesie, and sometimes they have like these crisscrossing black lines. I kid you not. If you don't remember him, I encourage you to Google it or something, but the guy literally looked like a baked ham. I'm not even joking. He looked like a baked ham with legs. I mean, and I think whenever they first saw him, Vince McMahon looked at his feet like, oh, look, he's got hooves. So they came up with a character so that he could portray himself as having hooves. And then he would kind of brush his feet on the ring floor, and then he would kind of charge at his opponents like a buffalo would, or a bison. I don't know. Terrible, terrible gimmick. Oh, it was awful. Now, unfortunately, neither Bastion Booger or Mantar are, they're no longer with us. Mantar just passed away just not too long ago. Bastion Booger, he's gone. He's no longer with us. In fact, Zombie Sailor Toys just released a Bastion Booger figure. I'm probably not going to get it just because I never cared about Bastion Booger, but I'm glad that some people are going to spend the money to get it, and it's going to be like a one of a kind figure. And if you get it, it'll be one of a kind, and you know. So, and there's going to be a limited run of them. But anyway, yeah, those are just 5 terrible gimmicks. I'm sure I'll be able to think of more because there was just a lot of just awful gimmicks. And they weren't all WWF. And in fact, I just talked about 1995 WWF, and there was a plethora, there was a ton of bad gimmicks there. Whew, that's going to be fun to think about. But man, over the years, the WWF had some pretty doozies, pretty big doozies as far as gimmicks go. So, yeah, again, I'll probably think of some more. And these are not necessarily in order. These are just 5 gimmicks that I thought were stupid. And so, anyway, yeah. So, Nasty Boys, terrible gimmicks. It's all in good fun. We're having fun here. So that is going to be the end of this video. So if you're new here, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.